Yeah, well, okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 1st, 2022 council meeting. This meeting is live streamed, recorded, and available on the internet by visiting the town's website at www.parrysound.ca. I'd like to mention that prior to the open session, there was a closed meeting, very brief one, and that was dealt with. I'd also like at this time to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and the waterways traveled by the Métis of this region. And okay, is there any prioritization of the agenda? No? Okay. We have a mover and seconder for the agenda circulated. Councillor Borneman, Councillor McCann. That the council agenda for November 1st, 2022 be approved as circulated. All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Nope. Okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the minutes? The minutes? Councillor Borneman, Councillor Keith. With the minutes from the regular council meeting held September 20th, October 4th, and October 18th, 2022 be approved as circulated. Any discussion or comments on any of those minutes? Nope. All in favor then? And that's carried. Questions of staff. Councillor Borneman and then Councillor Keith.
I don't see Miss McNamara here tonight, so I'm going to ask this question of Mr. Cairns. I know our survey with respect to the recreational master plan recently closed. I'm wondering if you can give us an approximation as to responses, whether there was enough participation to make that at least statistically valid, Mr. Cairns.
Certainly, through your worship. So I don't have exact numbers, but I do know that we received communication from the consultant. So there were a number of manual surveys filled out, and there was quite a pile, a physical pile, as well as they were pleased with the number of electronic surveys received back. So it is my understanding that we should have enough participation.
So how do we anticipate this moving forward and finding its way back here eventually?
Through your worship, the consultant will be compiling those survey results and they will be presented back to us and brought to council.
Okay. All right. Councillor Keith.
Yes, Mr. Cairns, I have a couple of questions. One, I noticed there's blue marks on some of the sidewalks. What's happening there?
Through your worship, blue marks typically denote a water location in anticipation of an excavation. Through Ontario One Call, we provide markings of our in-ground infrastructure whenever there's a request for location due to anticipated excavations.
So does that mean this year, like to sweat before Christmas? Is that what we're talking, or are we talking next year?
Through your worship, I'm not sure exactly the location you're referring to, but typically the locates are only valid for 60 days.
I have two other questions. And they're brief, I would think. Anyways, on Beaucrest there on Bow Street, what I'm wondering is, because we've done some monitoring, the speed monitoring, has there been or is there going to be a monitor somewhere in that area? Because I know one of the issues is that area, not only is it noisy, but that the traffic is still moving fairly quick before they come to that intersection. So I'm wondering.
Through your worship, so we do have some monitors around town through our streetlight vendor who provides radar monitors that are mounted on top of the streetlights. So they are constantly measuring traffic volumes and speed, and there are two on Bow Street, and I believe one is near that location. So we are paying attention to the speeds, and we are following up as well. I know we mentioned previously some of the tools that are available in terms of automated speed enforcement, because due to the volume of traffic that we're dealing with, there aren't a whole lot of options. OPP enforcement, when you have that type of volume, can cause issues, and it also makes it very difficult for the OPP to respond. So we are looking at options to help us control speeds at various locations around town.
So for clarification for that, when you're looking at options, does that mean that something is going to be coming back to council before the next budget?
Through your worship. So we have started already investigating the options for automated speed enforcement. It is legal in Ontario now. There are challenges with the administration of it. Actually, I'm scheduled to attend a seminar in Hamilton on the 17th of November on this very topic with a vendor who has the equipment and has the processing offering on the table. So we are following up. What I can say is the initial discussions regarding this technology, the indications from the vendor, well, it was through LAS that we had the initial discussions, and they are involved in this seminar as well. 70 violations a month. So typically 20 kilometers an hour over would be where we would set a threshold for violations. For example, 70 violations a month pays for the entire installation. Now, our goal would certainly not be to collect money, but to control traffic. So they're ongoing costs we will be looking into, and certainly our goal is to have it in place in 23.
Thank you. And my last question, which is of a lighter note, whatever Christmas parade, the Santa Claus parade, I take it it's the last Saturday in the month of November, but is that a night parade again, or what's the scoop, please?
Through your worship. So we are going, I believe, back to a more traditional parade. So, and I'll have to check. I believe it should be the 26th. We will confirm and make sure that the information is available. Town staff at Recreation are spearheading the effort. So the information will be out there ahead of time. And I realize we're getting close, so it'll be soon.
Thanks. Any other questions? No? Okay. Correspondence, Ms. Johnson.
Your worship, we have several items of correspondence. The first is from Blake Grace as a follow-up to his letter of that was presented at the last council meeting on behalf of the Parry Sound Seniors Club, requesting relief from the parking bylaw. He amended his request to request that the day of November 7th be the one where parking relief is provided. So there is an item on the agenda, a resolution to approve that under the same text as was approved at the last council meeting. The next item is from the Parry Sound Legion. It's information on Remembrance Day ceremonies this year, including flying the poppy flag. It was raised last Friday on October 28th and will be raised for the most part until November 11th. There is another day where there's a different flag raising this week. Also, the Remembrance Day ceremonies at 11 o'clock on November 11th at Market Square Park. The next item is from the Township of Carling. It's a resolution of support for the town's request for reconsideration of the building plans and budget for the Parry Sound Mega School. So a number of municipalities in the area have been responding with support resolutions. And indeed, the next item of correspondence is similar, one from the Township of the Archipelago. And the last item is also from the Township of the Archipelago, and I put it on the agenda as it is a resolution in support of Bill 5, which is at the Ontario Legislature regarding Stop the Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act 2022. This was the subject of a deputation that was to be made this evening. Unfortunately, the person making the deputation has contacted the town to indicate that she's not available this evening to do that. So that may be set at another time. And that's it for the correspondence, and looks after deputations.
All right, thank you. Reports. So we'll start with Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the 20th of October, I attended a Parry Sound Industrial Park Board meeting with Councillor Burton. The park continues to be in a strong position financially, and we're tracking according to budget. On the 26th, I attended a meeting of the Belvedere Heights Board of Management as well. To Councillor Keith's query about Santa Claus, it is on the town website already, the 26th at 4:30. Contact Jamie Young at the BOCC for further information. And there is a spot on the website if you wish to have a float in the parade. And as we're at November 1st, I encourage everyone to get out and attend a Remembrance Day ceremony next week. We should remember every day, not just November 11th, but at the bare minimum, get out and attend a ceremony next week. And that's my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. I too would like to encourage people to wear your poppy. I bought 3 today and left them all at home, so I was able to get one from downstairs. And it is important to remember people suffered and died for our freedom, and at some point in time, please take the time to remember. Also, there were 2 meetings actually missed in the last couple of weeks because of personal commitments. One was the library board meeting. I don't have a report from that one. Things are moving forward, however. As far as the museum goes, I missed that meeting, but I have a little bit of information to pass along. And let me just bear with me here. I'm usually used to reading off paper. So Thursday evening, October 25th, the West Parry Sound District Museum monthly board meeting was held. You may remember at our last council meeting, I talked about the barn project, and museum staff and volunteers have spent October 3rd to the 6th emptying the barn, which included renting of a storage unit that is currently on the lot. And artifacts were moved into the storage for a period of time to quarantine them before they go into the building. Adams Construction, we'd like to give them a note of thanks for donating the dumpster, its use and delivery. We're going to be starting up a heritage YouTube channel. And the first YouTube video has been uploaded to our museum's channel. The first of the 12 videos from a series, what we're calling From Our Collection. These 12 videos will be released on the second Wednesday of each month, and there'll be some interesting things to see and hear and learn about. And its business has been good. Certainly the attendance has certainly been up this year with the bulk of the COVID issues behind us, although it's still out there, so do take care. Rental bookings have increased. Also, the staff is undertaking an emergency response lesson, putting together a manual. 2 board members, staff, and 3 volunteers are working on that. And that's basically it. I want to, and I know we talked about this at the last meeting, but again, congratulate the outgoing councillors, Councillor Backman and Councillor Horn and Councillor Burton for their service to the town over the last 4 years. We wish them well and in their future endeavors. Thank you to everyone who got out and voted. And thank you for your support for me and for the incumbents who are sitting here this evening as well, including yourself, Mr. Mayor. So thank you, and that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. I will be brief. I did attend the dock to say welcome and au revoir to the last boat of the season, which was from France. And it seemed there was quite a lot of interest for people wanting to explore our community and around, because they even stayed overnight. So that's good for all of us. I attended the Community Policing Advisory Committee, and the stats really in comparison to West Parry Sound area detachment and the other municipalities around, basically we're all in sync. Violent crime and property crime and actually drugs are all down. There also, I would say, the processes for electronic tickets are now happening. So more of those are being issued. More people are also using citizen reporting, which is great. There has been an increase also in the number of people who have applied for vulnerable sector and criminal checks. And now we've got about a 1 week turnaround, which is certainly a great difference from before, which was definitely very slow. In reference to drugs there in the last quarter, because we're comparing it to the previous year, there were 3 big drug seizures. Those drugs involved fentanyl, cocaine, and methadone. And the majority of persons charged were from out of town. We're on Highway 69, so we know that we're a corridor, and those same individuals were charged with a variety of other offenses. Foot patrols are down a little bit when we compare last quarter of 2021. The community service officer, Joe Scally, has still been very busy. He also attends the hub on Gibson Street regularly, and that has been very helpful in trying to alleviate some issues that were arising before, as well as him attending the schools. The auxiliary, the police auxiliary, is trying to expand in our area, so it's an opportunity for people to volunteer, but it's also an opportunity for somebody who might be interested in becoming a police officer. So it's a good way of getting your feet wet, so to speak. I also asked at that meeting that there would be more patrols on Bow Street and Joseph Street, because people are speeding, and I know nobody really likes to get a ticket, but the bottom line is you got to learn one way or another. I do want to mention that I know I received an email, and it's probably just a slip, but the bottom line is the new CEO I was very pleased to see was Selena Martins for the library, who'd been hired, and she has a lot of experience. So it's really great to have seen that happen. And in conclusion, I would say it is sad, shall I say, that this is going to be the last council meeting of this term. But I want to say I look forward to being on the next term of council, and thank those people who chose to vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, staff, and public. October 27th at 10 a.m. I had an AMO executive meeting. And on the 27th at 6 p.m. was the Parry Sound District Land Ambulance meeting, and updates were given on the 2022 budget, the statistics for the past few months, and the 2023 budget was presented. And there will be resolutions coming to the new council from this committee. October 28th, as was mentioned, was the poppy flag raising for the Parry Sound Legion. And to, also chime in or whatever, please get out to a Remembrance Day ceremony if you possibly can. I think it's really important that we get out and remember, and at least, spend that time remembering those that fought for our freedom. And, there were some people that didn't vote, a number of people that didn't vote in this election. And when I think of, what's going on in the world right now and the freedom that's being missed by a number of individuals around the world and the havoc that's being caused and the opportunity that we have here in a democratic society to get out and vote, it is so important to do so. And, I really appreciate the people that did get out and vote. But the numbers are down. And, I think we should exercise our right to vote and support the democratic society that we have, that those people put down their lives for and served in, 2 world wars and other venues as well. So that's my report for tonight. So 921. Just gonna flip screens here. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor Keith, that council accept the updated information regarding amendments to the Planning Act via Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, and direct staff to prepare comments to the province regarding concerns related to the town's ability to regulate certain matters. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor McCann.
Well, I ran into Mr. Wren coming up the stairs and I had a brief conversation with him about everything that's come down. There's a lot that's there. Maybe you could speak to some of the stuff that's going to affect our municipality adversely.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for the opportunity to speak. Certainly a lot of information came fairly hot and heavy last week. A lot of the details we're still digesting. The report that was written for council tonight really focused on some of the Planning Act changes. There's specifically a couple changes that staff would like to bring up with council, discuss and bring forward some comments to the province. And I would note that it was last Tuesday, the province announced Bill 23, which is the More Homes Built Faster Act. And the proposed changes are part of the province's Housing Supply Action Plan, which aims to build 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years. And a lot of the changes are just that, to expedite development and to create more homes to meet certain goals of the province. And as noted, there are a number of changes to a number of different acts, and staff will be bringing forward more information to council at a later date. Staff had 2 concerns specifically noted in the report. One has to do with the ability of municipalities to require site plan agreements for developments of 10 units or less. The proposed bill would not allow municipalities to require site plan agreements for developments of 10 residential units or less. And staff's concern really has to do with our ability to review and require on-site or certain on-site measures such as stormwater management, dark sky friendly lighting, architectural features, as well as off-site improvements, which can be required through site plan, including pathways, sidewalks, lighting. Another concern is that proposals may be scaled down, say an 11 or 12 unit building, maybe scaled down to 10 units, such that site plans are no longer required. Staff are aware of some tools that these items can be addressed through by other means, such as a building bylaw, which potentially could include stormwater management review. Staff continue to look into that. However, there are some others that are not quite clear how these can be achieved, such as offsite improvements, such as sidewalk construction, landscape or trail improvements, which again currently are dealt with through site plan control. And I would also note that the town does have an internal procedure where we recoup parkland dedication when buildings are converted to condominium ownership. And it is staff's understanding that the proposed changes would no longer allow staff to collect parkland dedication for purpose-built residential apartments. when they're constructed or when they're later converted to condominium ownership. And I would note that the bill has passed first reading, but there's a comment period which closes on November 24th, in which staff are looking to submit some comments specifically on those two concerns that I noted. And certainly we're here to answer any other questions tonight that council may have.
So a follow-up, and thank you very much. That's a very thorough answer. You know, in thinking about this, is this just, you know, because this is obviously going to tie our hands to some degree and probably cost money in other ways, or a reduction in fees or development charges. Is this another form of downloading from Queen's Park, do you think? Mr. Mayor, you're shaking you're saying yes.
That off. I believe so, but I think Mr. Harris has some other points here as well, or whatever. They're gonna have significant impact on our municipal tax bill. And I do know that AMO has already penned a letter to the
Right.
government as well.
Certainly glad to hear that, because and in addition to the downloading, things done in haste seem to fall apart eventually. I never thought that anything good could come from doing things in haste, but there, I said it. Hopefully, Mr. Ford is listening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as Mr. Rand mentioned, this legislation, draft legislation was just released quite recently. There's not a lot of details. The two issues that he mentioned tonight are two that we had enough information to be concerned. We think there's a direct impact on the town, and we wanted to get that to council and then pass those comments on to the province. There's many other pieces of the legislation that are going to affect municipalities, the town and other municipalities that we don't know the details, so it's hard to just figure out what the impact might be. But Councillor McCann is right. There's a lot of it is downloading. And then there's also a component that's shifting who pays. Some of the things in the development charges legislation, and you know, we're in the process of putting in a DC development charges bylaw. There's things that are changing there that we won't be able to collect as much from growth from the new development as we currently could. So that's going to shift the cost. The cost is the cost. It needs to be paid, but it means somebody else is going to have to pay. And that somebody else typically is the property taxpayer. There's also discussions about trying to reduce taxes on affordable housing. And that if, again, the costs are the costs, if some homeowners, some property owners don't pay, then that shifts the cost to other property owners. And so there's a lot that we're going to have to get our minds around and figure out what the impact is. But there's a lot of shifting of costs down from the province and off developers and low-income housing to the property owner. So don't know the magnitude of those impacts, but the philosophy that growth pays for growth is really taking a hit through the proposed legislation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack in this legislation and, you know, and decipher. So we are doing that. And I don't mind saying at our executive meeting that we had last week, I had a little bit of a rant and, you know, on this whole thing, because it's going to affect a number of municipalities. And I agree. And that's what I said to the committee. This is a download. So, Councillor Borneman.
Well, I would just add that, you know, if you were a cynic, you would think that the timing of this might be curious at best, that, you know, when municipalities are undergoing a change in government, that the province would introduce something that requires almost immediate response time from, if you were a cynic, one might think that that was done intentionally and maybe not to minimize the negative response that you might get. So that aside, is there First of all, Mr. Mayor, is our AMO rep, are you allowed to share the letter that is being forwarded from them with council and staff? And
I would have to ask.
okay, and secondly, I assume, Mr. Rand, that our response will be brought back at the November 15th meeting if we're to submit it prior to
Yeah.
November
Gonna have to be.
24th.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be. I will ask about that, okay, to see, and if I can share that with council. Okay. Counselor Keith,
Yes, well, what I'm wondering about is whatever response that we have, will there be a plan that this is also being forwarded to other municipalities or trying to get other municipalities' input also on this? Because sometimes one municipality may have an idea that we hadn't thought of, and I think again, it's just strength in numbers. Is that any part of the plan?
Through the mayor, first of all, our intent was to submit following this meeting, not to bring a letter back for members of council to review. So we make sure we get it in there in time. I think municipalities are all kind of in the same short time frame as we are. I think what we'll be doing is looking for other resolutions that we might bring back to the 15th. If need be, but if there's other resolutions out there that somebody's crafted that, because they'll have another 2 weeks worth of time to deal with it than us, we could bring it back if there's something worth endorsing. So we'll be watching for other resolutions that are worthy of our bringing to council.
yeah, Counselor Borneman, then Counselor McCann.
So to Mr. Harris, what is forwarded from staff will be shared with council.
Through the mayor, absolutely.
Okay, Counselor McCann,
I was just wondering where our MPP sits on this story, this issue.
he's a member of cabinet, so.
Well,
I'm sure the whip's right after him.
yeah, well. There's a partisan politics in action again. Is there anything, do we have any kind of support from him?
I haven't heard a thing. I think they're probably pretty close-lipped on this. I think what we're doing is probably what a lot of other municipalities are trying to do right now, and that's to get something out before the deadline to concern, but I just wanted to check with something with the CAO.
Sure.
There was another, through the mayor raised the question about municipalities using reserves, and I don't recall all the details. There's a lot of information to kind of sift through, but there are there is a desire for the province to have municipalities use their reserves. You can't, if you're collecting money, say development charges, they want you to not just collect it, but collect it and spend it to put the infrastructure in the ground. And so, that just, it may be the case if you spend it or lose it. So, the timing of when it makes sense to do things might not fit this new legislation. So there's really a lot going on that we don't understand, but they're almost getting into almost micromanaging how we manage our finances, the timing of our projects versus the timing of development, coordinating water and sewer infrastructure with road construction or reconstruction. So, and if those projects are partially funded from development charges and partially funded from the taxpayer, there's a lot of coordination because you might have funding for taxation and not DCs or vice versa. So this could have really far-reaching implications on municipal finances and capital construction plans, but we don't have really a lot of details. Just you read bullet statements or short paragraphs with not a lot of regulations behind it, and it raises questions.
And that is a good question. I just wanted to verify too, that someone else saw that because I knew that was there. And it concerns me because they look at municipalities and they go, oh, they got a hockey sock full of reserves. Although a lot of those reserves are earmarked for other projects and, you know, and to stabilize a municipality. And if all of a sudden they think that you've got a lot of money sitting in a bank, you know, it's earmarked. So, I guess there's a lot to unpack in this legislation and try to understand. And yeah, we've got to make a statement or whatever with them. Yeah. Councilor McCann.
Yeah, and I did actually had another question. Mr. Rand was mentioning something about with I don't know whether it was subsidized housing or affordable housing, that taxes would be lower. Who benefits from that? The people that build the homes, the people who live in them. With a lot of affordable housing and assisted housing, you know, are owned by developers and landowners and such. So how does lowering the taxes that they pay really do us any good or them any good if they're still basically collecting rent? Although I suppose maybe it would be lower than the market value or at such.
Through you, your worship, I would note that the proposed act would look at parkland dedication and development charges, not necessarily property tax. So just wanted to clarify that. I think where the province may be coming from is to reduce the initial fees of development in order to expedite developments, not necessarily a property tax refund. Also, depending on it's a little bit confusing because in certain parts of the proposed changes, it does have to do with subsidized, affordable, or attainable housing. With respect to the parkland dedication, which is somewhat nominal at the end of the day, but purpose-built apartment dwellings would be exempt. And from what I've read and understand, that it may not necessarily be tied to whether or not it's attainable in terms of the rents.
Thank you.
Councilor Borneman, I think you had your.
Yeah, I did. I take it, you know, Mr. Parris kind of spurred me with this. I take it there's no mention made in this legislation about, you know, 1.5 million new homes is going to require an awful investment in infrastructure. It doesn't matter where they go. I take it there's no mention made in this particular bill about any provincial funding towards any of that.
No. There's not. But there's going to have to be.
So another instance where the province wants to tell us what to do, but not help us pay for it.
So far. Yep.
Through the mayor, a couple of comments. I think that's why they want to suspend the reserves. They see that as infrastructure reserves. We don't need to give you money if you've got money in the bank, so to speak. The other thing, there is legislation that is looking at what Councillor McCann was speaking about, is somehow subsidizing or lowering taxes on affordable homes. To the extent that that was to happen, I haven't seen the details, whether that goes to the tenants or the landlord and whether he passes it on, who knows? Our tax staff are currently looking at that. And that's one of the advantages. Our manager of taxation is part of a tax collectors association. And so they're discussing new legislation at that level. Parry sounds fortunate to have somebody with that right at the table, discussing and commenting on legislation in its draft form. So that's why we support senior staff and managers and everybody being involved in associations, so we get a chance to influence legislation early on before it becomes finalized. The one comment I'd make is that certainly we live in a society where, you know, there's a socialist element where we support those that are less fortunate than others, but the property taxes shouldn't be the mechanism for redistributing wealth. Property taxes should pay for services to the property. You know, full stop. Roads, sidewalks, snow clearing, planning, those things that we as a municipality provide to the taxpayers, property taxpayers, to the residents. if you're redistributing wealth, the rich to the poor, the haves and the have-nots, that's what income tax is for. You tax those that make money and you redistribute it to those that are less fortunate for whatever reason. So the province and the federal government should be doing this. They shouldn't be, we shouldn't be subsidizing housing based on property taxes. Many of our residents don't have funds that are liquid enough to pay more taxes. A lot of their wealth is tied up in their home. They can't redistribute that wealth unless it's a brick at a time. But the province, the federal governments raise income tax, again, from the rich, they tax, and then they distribute through various programs to those that are less fortunate. That's where any of this social housing and those other social services should be funded, not from the property taxpayers. So there's a lot of things that are up in the air. We don't know what the final legislation is going to look like, but a lot of things that give local municipalities and property taxpayers, I think, should be concerned.
Those are good points. And I think that's what I had in mind when I asked Mr. Rand about, who benefits from reduced property taxes. And what you said about property taxes paying for the services, if they're the same for everyone, it balances the load, I suppose. It equalizes everyone. So it'll be interesting to see how it.
And that's the type of thing that needs to go in the ladder.
Yeah,
to the province,
most definitely.
know.
Yeah.
And to remind them, there is only one taxpayer. And they got their pockets pulled out right now, I think. So anyway. Okay. Anything else? I think good conversation on that. If the public's listening, and they should be on that, hopefully they're aware that we're concerned, with what's going on. Councillor Keith?
So what prevents anybody who's a taxpayer from writing a letter?
Nothing.
Nothing. So maybe we should be encouraging that too.
Sure. Anybody that wants to can.
And if they don't know the address, I'm sure they can contact the town and be,
Oh, glad to give it to them.
thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the resolution? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, item 931, moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Borneman, that council approved the 2022 third quarter progress report on the town's key performance objectives, KPOs, as set out in Schedule A. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman.
I think it might be wise if Mr. Harris were to give a
Polls note version?
summation. Yeah, I don't imagine too many people took the time to read through, in the public. Took
Okay.
the time
I know
to
I
read
plowed
this.
through it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we provided a quarterly update, and we try to track what council has done and the achievements relative to the strategic plan that it approved at the beginning of this term of council. In August, we provided quite a fulsome report, not just what we had achieved as a group in that quarter, but what we collectively achieved over this entire term of council. And that list was quite extensive. When I started to jot down a few things, it was quickly became, we've achieved quite a bit, and that it's remarkable. Plus, it was during 3 years of COVID, which created its own challenges. So I think this council should be very pleased as we wrap up this term with the achievements as that's been made. At the time, I described a lot of the achievements as building blocks, not necessarily visible to the public. Things like a capacity study, both in the water and wastewater services, so that we're able to deal with requests for developers like the Marriott Hotel and other development condominiums and otherwise, because we have that information. That's not something the public sees, but it's a lot of important work that's been done. During this last quarter, in July, the board that oversees the Recreation and Culture Project, in July, the project manager was hired. And in September, the board authorized issuing an RFP for architectural services. So that currently that RFP is outstanding. That's being managed through the town. And the RP closes on November 22nd. So the project is moving along very steadily. We'll have an architect on board within a couple of months, and they'll begin designing it. So it's a real project. It's happening. And it's pretty exciting. You'll start to see more things once the architect is on board. I don't know if there's other things that maybe one of the senior leadership team members want to mention what's happened in the last quarter, but that's the highlights from my perspective.
Anything any of you want to add? No? No? Okay. Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you. I'm asking for more of a housekeeping thing, and I'm wondering if this is possible. I find in reading it, has it ever been considered, or could it be considered, instead of us doing from the beginning to where we are now, because I think some of us on council have read ABC in 2020 and 2021. Why don't we reverse it so that we can see the latest and follow it backwards? And that way we see what the change is rather than reading the same stuff that we may have read a few times. Is that being considered? And whether it was put in another color so it jumps out on you, that might be like extra, but I just think it might be easier to comprehend, and it might be less likely to fall asleep.
Certainly through the mayor, we can, make whatever changes, make it more accessible, usable by members of council and the public. So we can start the chronology at the top. The intent is that we are using currently a different color, although it's a shade of blue and it might not stand out so much. But to identify those additions at the bottom of a section. We're also looking at, for this plus the task tracker of, because it's a new term of council, we'll kind of get a lot of that history and park it. So we know the history, but we'll start the next term of council with maybe a brief summary of where we are. So there's not as much volume there for to go through this next term of council. So we'll make that change.
Okay. All right. All in favor? And that's carried, not opposed. Moved by Councillor Keith and second by Councillor Borneman that notwithstanding section 3.4 of bylaw 2022-7275, the council and committee and procedural regulations requiring that the inaugural meeting of council shall be held in the council chambers. Council hereby approves holding the November 15th, 2022 inaugural meeting of council at the Charles W. Stockey Center. Any discussion? Councillor Keith?
Yes, I'm just wondering, with the meeting being at the Stockey Center, will it still be able to be a hybrid meeting with the owl, et cetera? So there's no issues there, anybody viewing?
Yes, we'll be able to accommodate that hybrid live stream recording, all of those normal technical parts of the meeting.
They've got a lot of
I might just-
technology down there.
If I could add, I think the technology it'll be a much better production than in this chamber. So we won't use the owl. They have the ability now. They added technology during COVID so they could live stream things and create an audience online.
Mhm.
And so we're going to be able to take advantage of that.
I appreciate that, but I don't know that necessarily everybody in the public that is listening to that would be on the same page. So I'm glad that you're tooting the horn there.
Yeah. Councillor McCann?
I would echo what Mr. Harris said. There is excellent equipment at the Stockey Center. They should be very proud of themselves for the setup that they have. It's wonderful. I meant to mention in my report that we're at the Johnny Cash tribute that Saturday night was a great presentation. So this is a great idea. I think it's wonderful. It can be something, it can be what we make it. Will we be promoting this then through the local media? Is there anything special planned? Will we be treated to the bagpipes thing?
I've already put my wish list in. haven't I?
So as far as promotion, your worship, as I think I put in the report, it'll be on the town website. Will be, through this medium now, letting
Mhm.
people know. We were also going to be sending out notices, like open invitation to organizations out there so that people know to come to the Stocky Center for this inaugural meeting.
I think that's great. Again, this speaks to engagement and getting people involved, and perhaps maybe for those who didn't know, a lot of people during the campaign were saying, well, I don't know this person. I've never seen this one. I don't. So, and there are a lot of reasons for that, but essentially this is a good way to get them engaged. And when we're talking about voting percentages earlier this evening, Mr. Mayor, even though we were down this year, we typically are higher than the provincial average for turnout, where over the years it was about 38% of the voting public. On average, we were doing just over 50%. So I know that's down this year, but I think we're still doing better than the average, the provincial average. So, it's nice to see people engage, but we can always see more.
We can always
We
do
should see
better.
more.
I think we can always do better. The municipally, the average was, I think, around 37%. Municipally, yeah, on average across the province. I think we're probably somewhere in there as well. And last year was about the same. I think it was 38%, something like this. Yeah.
So with this election for the municipal election, as you're saying, electing mayor and council, the average was 42.2%.
Oh, it was?
In the 2018 election, it was 50%, just over
Oh, okay.
50%.
Alright.
So it did fall 8%, but as has been stated, it is still higher than the provincial average.
Yeah.
The provincial average of municipal elections.
Municipal elections. Okay, well, that's good. That's good because it didn't quite look that way or whatever when you looked at the numbers, but anyway, it's all good. That if we got that many people out voting, then that's good. Yeah. All right. All in favor of that resolution okay, perfect. Thanks. Carried. Nope. No. 951, moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Borneman. Pursuant to bylaw 2019-6912 is amended, which permits council to grant an exemption from the time limited parking regulations as set out in section 4.5 of the bylaw. And upon the request of the Parry Sound Seniors Club, 1269, council hereby grants exemption to the Parry Sound Seniors Club 1269 from the time limited parking regulation as set out in section 4.5 of the parking bylaw 2019-6912 on Monday, November the 7th, 2022, pertaining to the west side of James Street from McMurray Street to Rosetta Street only. Any discussion? All in favor? That's good. Thanks. Moved by Councillor Keith and second by Councillor Borneman that whereas the Community Safety and Policing Act CSPA 2019 calls for the end of Community Policing Advisory Committees, CPACs, and the creation of the Ontario Provincial Police OPP detachment boards. Whereas the Ministry of Solicitor General has developed an OPP detachment board framework that will allow affected municipalities and First Nations the flexibility to create a board which reflects community and local needs. And whereas the Ministry of the Solicitor General has asked municipalities and First Nations within the detachment area to work together to determine the composition of their board and the manner in which they submit the proposal to the ministry. And whereas members of the existing West Parry Sound District CPAC have indicated interest in establishing a board representative of CPAC municipalities and First Nations. Now therefore, Council of the Town of Parry Sound hereby supports submission by the CPAC representative from the town of Parry Sound to the the province of Ontario, the Ontario Provincial Police Detachment Board proposal substantially in the form attached, representing the 7 West Parry Sound area municipalities and Henvey Inlet First Nation, and further that this resolution be forwarded to the municipalities within the West Parry Sound District and Henvey Inlet First Nation. Councillor Keith, I'm sure you got something on this.
Yes, thank you very much. I was at the last Community Policing Advisory Committee meeting, and Joe Ryman, or Councillor Joe Ryman, had represented the group in reference to compiling, shall we say, the information that was presented to the ministry in reference to the policing service board. Basically, what the makeup was after some discussions is because in this area, it has actually worked very well. The number, basically 7 municipalities that have been on the advisory committee board and the First Nation, Henvey Inlet First Nation. And what has worked very well is we've had a very good working relationship all along, and it has been very efficient. And one of the things that I think is important to recognize in that we're trying to maintain, and we have been already advised that the proposal that we're suggesting, which is quite similar to what we've had, is that when this idea first came about, how it came, if I backtrack, why this idea came about was because in various areas throughout the province, the committees did not seem to have shall we say, a really fluent relationship with the police, and therefore trying to communicate information. And what was happening was, well, there was duplication and it wasn't very efficient. In our area, and our CPAC meeting, is what was been called, has been very efficient. We've had various detachment commanders over the years, and our formula of how we're working has worked well for many years now, over 20 years. Our mayor was also a member of the committee. So we have a committee that has been working very well together. We've asked for input as to what should be the basic structure if we would want much of a change. And it basically came up with filling out the form, which was basically the same structure of committee members, and including the Henvey Inlet First Nation, which were quite supportive of it. And then also, so that would make up 8 members. And then we were looking at 2 persons, administrative resources is how it was termed, and that would be for record keeping and administrative costs. So the formula basically is about the same. And because the province is under a deadline to get back to them, the plan was for all committee members to bring that to their council, asking for a resolution to be passed so that we can all be hopefully on the same page and move this forward. Naturally, even if it's passed, there'll be all sorts of details that'll have to be worked out, but the formula of how it should work is what is presented here, and all committee members seem to be in sync with it. So what is happening tonight is I'm asking for support from council, just as the other municipalities will be asking the same for a resolution.
That's good. Appreciate it. Yep. Anything further? Councillor McCann?
Well, I think Councillor Keith explained it very well, so she may have answered the question I had, but I was just thinking, is this something that the Ontario Provincial Police welcomes? It sounds like they do. Being a provincial organization, it sounds like they're very flexible or malleable, I suppose, when it comes to local needs and such that it's not like a McDonald's franchise where you make the same hamburger over and over, no matter what city you're in.
That's correct. There was a task force that occurred almost 4 years ago, just definitely pre-Q COVID, but in this term. And I went to that meeting. So there was various meetings throughout the province. And one of the things that I did glean from that, because there was OPP reps and there was municipal reps from all over the province. The bottom line is I went away thinking, you know what? West Parry Sound has been doing things really well, because I heard different municipalities very upset. And, you know, again, police officers in areas where their work and trying to communicate was being duplicated, where here we've had a really efficient system. We've got along well together. If there has been issues, every detachment commander we've had was where we were able to discuss, figure it out and move on. Yet when I attended that meeting, it was quite clear not everybody has a smooth ship like that. So we have that flexibility, and each police service board will be allowed to have that flexibility, but it seems what is working here is working well. And as I would say, if the clock is ticking and it's ticking well, don't take it apart.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to concur with Councillor Keith. It's worked well for many years. And, you know, I think we've been lucky to have the relationships we've had with the different detachment commanders. So, and yeah, I think we kind of set an example for some other boards. Anyway, we're good. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor Keith, whereas attracting primary healthcare providers, including doctors, to Parry Sound and other small communities has been a difficult task. And whereas the provincial government announced a tuition program to attract nurses to underserved areas of Ontario, now therefore be resolved, the Town of Parry Sound Council requests that the government of Ontario provide funding and change legislation to allow the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, CPSO, implement the changes proposed in their letter to the Minister of Health on August 18th, 2022, which includes: 1, exempting IEPs from the regulatory requirements to have Canadian experience, redo residency where all other requirements are met, and 2, implementing practice-ready assessment programs similar to those already used in 7 other provinces. And further, the government of Ontario develop a similar tuition program to attract family doctors to underserved areas of Ontario. And further, this motion is circulated to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Health, MPP, that should be Graydon Smith, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. It's okay. Any comments? I think it's pretty straightforward, but Councillor Keith, you look like you want to say something.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say again that what is being presented here, I think most of us are quite aware. There's a lot of people, for example, if we look at our community, the Parry Sound area in whole, that are in need of a physician. We know, just as we've seen for the issue about the schools, that we know that school, the plan for it, the proposal is too small. We see immigration growing. There's stuff on the news just again tonight about the prediction of 500,000 people more as immigrants within the next few years coming to our country. So we know that there's growth. We know, why do we need to reinvent the wheel? We got 7 other provinces already implementing a practice-ready assessment program. So I mean, like, somebody has to get listening here and saying, hey, okay, we have people who are qualified. Let's make sure that we do our best to have them helping our community and caring for our community. It's all part of growth. It's all part of helping people. So I think that to support this is supporting all people in our province. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? And that's carried. So, moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann. The bylaw number 2022-7289 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings, that's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Borneman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? And that's carried. So prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is the inaugural meeting of the new 2022-2026 council schedule for Tuesday, November the 15th, 2022 at 7 p.m. This meeting will be held at the Stocky Center at 2 Bay Street in Parry Sound and will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Council meeting schedule and notices of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes, and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website. Go to www.parrysound.ca under news and public notices. And your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. And for Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. And that's a wrap for this council. Night.